Hi guys, Michael Abayomi here. So I just got done watching the 6th episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon, titled Small Folk. And as is customary on the channel, I'm going to be discussing the episode in full spoilery details. So consider this a spoiler warning if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want to know what happens beforehand. So the episode opens with the Lannister army arriving at the Golden Suits, ready to march for Harrenhal, but not before they get the assurance of Aemond that they'll be supported by Vhagar. This of course ends up angering Aemond, as he sees it as an insult that they would just summon him on a whim that way. So he instead instructs Criston Cole to take what was left of their armies from the Battle of Rook's Rest and to march for Harrenhal, promising that he was going to join him when the time was right. And after the council meeting is done, Aemond asks Alicent to stay behind so that they could talk, and as it turns out, it was to question what exactly her role was in the small council, and the interaction ends with him relieving her of all official duties. So this scene pretty much sets the stage for what a rule under Aemond is going to look like, as we can see that unlike Aegon, he's a very calculating and cold, decisive leader that doesn't mind making tough decisions even if it hurts those that are close to him. And even later on in the episode, where he gets word about the unrest that is brewing in the streets of the city and Lord Larys tries to weasel his way into the position of hand, you can see how he just shuts him down like immediately. And this was a very funny moment because Lord Larys himself, who was this conniving person, couldn't even see Aemond making that kind of cold, calculated declaration. So basically, Aemond acknowledges that yes, he does need a new hand, but at the same time, he wouldn't want him and he would rather go for Otto Hightower. So word is sent to Old Town, but nobody had heard from Otto in a while, so it remains to be seen exactly what would happen in this situation. But what is clear is that Aemond is very much eager and willing to meet his uncle, Daemon, in battle. And speaking of Daemon, we once again have him having his hallucinations over at Harrenhal, and this time around he is in one where they pretty much reenact the scene where King Viserys had declared that he was not fit to be his heir. So at this point it's becoming a bit tedious, I have to admit, that Daemon is just stuck in this endless loop of having all these visions, and he's making it look like his storyline is not really moving forward like the way it should. And even though I've been a staunch defender of this season thus far, which is relatively slower pacing, I think it's high time that we actually start getting some action from Daemon. It's high time that his own storyline starts bearing some fruits. But he has his vision, and afterwards he even ends up confronting Simon Strong, accusing him of putting a spell on him of some kind. And in the midst of his descent into madness, he even attempts to flee the haunted castle, but he's stopped by Alice, who ends up consoling him and in a roundabout way assures him that all of his troubles will be resolved on their own in 3 days time, which, as we find out later on, she was alluding to the fact that Lord Grover Tully, who was the bedridden liege lord of the soldiers in the Riverlands, was going to die, and it is of course hinted that she had some role to play in this particular occurrence. So it is still unclear whether Alice is an ally to Daemon or whether or not she's just trying to do what she feels is in the best interest of the realm, the greater good, more or less. Over at Dragonstone, we have Rhaenyra asking Sir Stefan Darklyn to attempt to claim one of the dragons in their camp, since he was one of those in the records that apparently had a link to the Targaryen bloodline, and he more or less sees the appointment as a great honor. And even though the bonding ceremony initially appears to be going according to plan, of course the whole thing ends as we pretty much all expect from a show like House of the Dragon, with the dragon sea smoke burning him to a crisp. And as the title of the episode alludes, we see a focus on the trials and tribulations of the small folk in King's Landing, who have to make do with what little they have in the absence of enough food because of the ongoing blockade. But as it turns out, the plan hatched by Mysaria for Rhaenyra was for them to send some aid from Dragonstone and to make it clear that this was coming from Queen Rhaenyra herself. But this has the knock-on effect of inciting a riot when the food isn't enough to go around, and the people of King's Landing start declaring for Queen Rhaenyra, even as they go around looting and attacking the guards. And we even have Alicent and Helena caught in the midst of all this, getting a taste for just how much the people had grown to resent them. And I just have to say that the people of King's Landing are one of the most fickle people I've seen in my life, because they are so easily swayed, so easily manipulated. These are the same people that were mourning along with Helena when the funeral procession for Prince Jaehaerys was making its way through the city. It's just clear that they don't really have any kind of affiliation. It's just about who can give them what they want at any given moment, and which kind of reflects real life, because this is the same way that people get manipulated during election cycles, and you now end up with the masses being tricked to vote for candidates that don't have any business being rulers in the first place. But let's not go off on that tangent right now. Reeling things back to the show, Rhaenyra gets word of just how well their plan has worked, but she still has doubts that they'll be able to win the war, even in light of this, because of the impossibility of her current predicament, the fact that Daemon is still kind of a wild card and she can't really tell if she can rely on him, and even her son Jaehaerys coming to question her leadership and the decisions she's been making lately. But Mysaria steps in to console her, really opening up about why she had chosen to pledge her allegiance to her, which prompts Rhaenyra to embrace her in a hug. But one thing leads to another, and before we know it, we have the two of them in a full-on makeout session. But in classic Hollywood movie fashion, they are both interrupted when one of the guards comes in with news about Sea Smoke and the fact that he was spotted flying with an unknown dragon rider. And the episode ends with Rhaenyra riding out on Syrax to confront this potential threat. So looking at this episode as a whole, this was yet another episode that can be considered build up for bigger things to come, because believe it or not, we're already approaching the end of the season with just 2 more episodes left, and all the chess pieces that still need to be maneuvered into specific positions have to be moved there. So this episode kind of has to do most of that legwork. So we can see with the unrest going on in King's Landing, as well as with everything that is happening with Daemon in Harrenhal, that eventually all these things are going to coalesce into this final climactic moments that would hopefully bring all these plot threads to a satisfactory close. And looking at the preview for the next episode, we can clearly see Daemon being forced to answer for his war crimes, all the atrocities that he has been committing ever since he got to the Riverlands in the name of raising an army for Team Black, as Rhaenyra moves to confront the new unknown dragon rider. But being the penultimate episode, you can bet that there's far more than this at play, but we'll just have to wait until next week before we actually know the full extent of it. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about the 6th episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon. What did you think about the episode? Are you pleased with how things are progressing with Daemon and the Harrenhal storyline, or would you rather things pick up in pace? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.